So, Mr. Gerald Brisco, I wanted to thank you once again for taking the time to do this interview. I greatly appreciate it. You are definitely not just a legend in Florida and southern territories, but really just across the whole wrestling industry, so it's very kind of you to do this.
Well, thank you. I always like sharing history of our business.
And you definitely have plenty, so I guess we'll kind of start off around when you debuted. So is it true that you started training to become a wrestler kind of in 1967 with your brother?
Yeah, you said 67, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah. I started training, Jack had started right after he won the national championships in 1965. He won the national championship in March, and by May he had his first TV match, and so during spring breaks and summertime and everything, Jack and I were real close, and so I would travel with Jack. I'd make all these loops, and before you knew it, there was a job opening for a ring truck driver and somebody to drive the truck and set up the ring and set up the arena and set up the box office. These were like little summer spot shows we'd run in baseball parks and little out-of-the-way cities and stuff like that, and little bitty armories and everything. So I got that job, so I actually started going, and of course, a lot of times I'd set the ring up early and some of the guys would be there, or some of the talent would be there, and they'd get in the ring with me and start rolling around. And that's basically, I didn't go to any school to learn how to be a pro wrestler. I was a wrestler from college and everything. So I was a wrestler, but all I had to do was learn the entertainment part of it, and that came pretty easy once I figured out what the business was.
Right. You mentioned, too, that Jack had experience doing amateur wrestling before becoming a pro wrestler, and while researching for this interview, I saw how accomplished he was, and supposedly didn't get taken down once his entire senior campaign. That's incredibly impressive. But you also got into amateur wrestling as well, and won some tournaments of your own, and were also very active in sports and stuff, and especially football. How much did doing all those sports, and especially the amateur wrestling experience, kind of help you really transition into the pro wrestling industry?
Well, I always thought, having the knowledge, and I tell these guys I recruit now, you have a special skill that very few people have. You know how to wrestle. People used to ask me what was my gimmick. Back in the old days, everybody had a gimmick. Blonde hair,
Adrian Adonis,
whatever. Yeah, I mean, they were gimmicks. And I said, my gimmick is I'm a wrestler. No, I know you're a wrestler, but what's your gimmick? I said, that's it. I'm a wrestler. I know how to wrestle. I started wrestling since I was 8 years old. So I've been around it all my life. So I was a wrestler, and that's what Jack and I used to, we're wrestlers, It don't matter if you're a professional or amateur, you're a wrestler if you're wrestling in school, And so that was my gimmick, and I always thought it was an advantage because I knew how to get into hold, I knew how to get out of hold, I knew body positioning. And amateur wrestling, the big thing is body positioning, reading moves, anticipating moves and stuff like that. So I felt the knowledge of my school wrestling and all my background in the shoot style of wrestling. It helped me develop in the pro because I could anticipate moves, I could see them coming, I could feel the body motion, which way the body was going and which way I needed to take it. I wasn't a big guy, my brother wasn't a big guy, so you had to know this stuff to help with leverage and help with the physics of the body, of slamming the body around. And then controlling, you're wrestling, you weigh 220 pounds or 215 pounds, you're wrestling a guy like Joe Luke, 330 pounds, you better know how to move that weight around, or you're gonna get eat up.
Oh, definitely. And not only does it help you in the moment, but it really helps you. It really helps you make things look real and that much more snug when you are in the ring. Some of the greatest workers of all time have amateur wrestling experience, but more recently, I mean, it's clearly like Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle, and now Bobby Lashley's just won the WWE title not too long ago, and they all had very prolific wrestling experience, but I think a lot of what you guys accomplish just as time moves on is kind of overlooked, just how important you all were in really inspiring that technical style. But it's very interesting. So how was it getting to team with your brother and having all the success? Because you really kind of caught fire to the entire southern half of the country and really just shook the industry. So how was that, and how was it getting to share those experiences with your brother?
Well, it was really cool. It really was. Jack and I set out, like I said, he trained me. He basically trained me in his dining room of his house before I had my first match. I was, going through a hold and stuff like that, and moves and everything. So, and like I said, I'd driven a ring truck and set up the rings and, the box office and all that stuff for Leroy McGurk, who started us both. So, Jack and I, when we started out, we both had gold, and they were similar. We wanted to be the best, but we were those two kids. When we didn't travel together much because he was older than me, and he was basically gone out of Oklahoma by the time I started in pro wrestling. So he was down in Texas. So we'd heard from a lot of guys, that the South really likes a lot of wrestling, likes good solid wrestling. You guys would be good. So Jack and I, before we both set off, we kind of made an agreement. Hey, we'll be single wrestlers. Let's go accomplish both of our goals. Let's go do what you want to do, and I'll go do what I want to do. And he said, we said, we've made a plan, later on in our career, after we accomplish a few things, we could be a tag team and team up and then have a fresh start and, go around. So, but let's don't go to the same place. Let's go to two different places. You go down to, Jack said, I'll go down to Florida where, I can go down there and get over real strong. And then if I need a tag team partner, I can bring you in. But you go somewhere close, and the Carolinas was the best option at that time. You go to the Carolinas and you get over up there, and we could do the same thing. So we kind of devised a plan where, we'd work in different places, and then, of course, the Funk Brothers came along at that time.
Right.
Aaron, the Brisco, and the Funk Brothers, one of the most iconic feuds ever in the history of wrestling. So, there were a lot of tag teams, and so Jack was called up to the Carolinas a lot to wrestle team up with me and against Dory and Terry and Dory Sr., and I was called down here to Florida, and that feud, kind of caught on fire because it was four athletes, two Texas Cowboys against two Oklahoma Indians, so and we played it out in Texas and at Oklahoma and Louisiana, and it got over because all four of us were athletes. They'd be great football players, and us being wrestlers. So it was that rough and tumble wrestling style, the Wild West style, and it worked. And then when Jack won the world title and I won the junior heavyweight title, we decided, let's team up now. We never had that world title. That's when we went to Carolinas after Steamboat Youngblood and started chasing them for the world tag team title. But it was great when we finally did, to team up and get to travel a lot together because, well, like I said, we were in different states. We weren't really, that close together, where we could see each other every day and, but our styles were so much alike because we both come from the same background, and so it was easy to mesh, and coming up with the funks, and having their style and our style. I mean, it just was magic in the ring.
Yeah, just some of those tag team matches are really renowned, and I thought it was really interesting too, because I was going to also ask, but you kind of already answered. Just the chemistry that you two had was very impressive, but it just makes perfect sense when you find out that Jack had helped train you, so it really was just impressive, and a lot of, I think, teams kind of look to find that connection, but really just can't find it, and for you two, it seems seamless.
Yeah, it's really hard for a tag team to find it, and I think that's the trouble with I'm not going to go into today's product,
right.
But that's the trouble. They're just put together so quickly, and if they don't click and blend within the first month or two, it's broken up, and these kids don't have time to develop that chemistry with each other and develop a great tag team. A great tag team. Jack and I were lucky. We were blood brothers. I mean, we were real blood brothers, and I wasn't not some fake brothers, but we were real brothers, and so we had that bloodline and that mindset, and we both had the amateur background. We had the exact same coaches, from middle school all the way through high school, all the way through college. We had the exact same coaches, so it was easy to kind of read the mind, because, like I said, we were great at reading body language, and when you have a partner like that you can just look at his body positioning, and even with the funk, we had such great chemistry because we knew where they, except Terry was kind of crazy, but could never really figure him out. But we kind of knew, what direction the match was going and where to go, just simply by body positioning, and that once again falls back on being blood brothers and being athletes and having the same coaching coming up all of our careers. Through amateur wrestling and pro, we always had the same coaches, which I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's my brother. That's obviously the completely opposite. But my brother and I also, when we played baseball, had the same hitting coach, and you could really just, when you started looking side by side, even with something like that, you can really just kind of start to notice how they just start to look the same, and really just fluid motion. So, and I mean, you guys were some of the greatest athletes of that time period as well, especially with just how much you had to work and all of the travel, and just I don't know if you had the same schedule, but I've read stories about, we had the afternoon house show, then we had the evening house show, and then we had to do the same.
The double shots, a good old double shot. I mean, every holidays, brutal as it sounds, the holidays were our best days. Christmas Day, and mostly Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving Day is one of the biggest family days of the year for our country, and we would have double shots every Thanksgiving. We'd wrestle at 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Atlanta, Georgia. Get on an airplane and fly our Jacksonville, Florida. Get on an airplane after the match at about 3 o'clock. On the way out to the airport, stop by a fried chicken place, grab you a box of chicken, get on a private plane, and fly to Atlanta and have an evening shot that night. And wrestle that night. That's Thanksgiving Day, and it was the same Christmas. It was brutal, but you what? You made your year on those shots, because those days were traditional wrestling days, and we'd have, in the Omni in Atlanta, we'd have 16,000, 17,000 people, and Jacksonville Coliseum, we'd have 10,000, 12,000 people. The place would be packed, so it was worth your time, and that's when you made your money.
Yeah, right, especially back then in terms of entertainment, there were just such limited options, so...
Yeah, especially on a holiday,
Yeah. That was before a lot of the good Christmas movies were even out, so...
Yeah, exactly, and that was really before, even the NFL and the NBA started showcasing all their feature games on TV, and now you turn on Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day, you got all the best teams playing, so they can grab that entertainment audience.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that they really started broadcasting heavily like live games until the 70s. So I mean,
Yeah.
for a long time, local wrestling was.
Was the end.
Yeah.
Like people talk about here in Tampa. When I come to Tampa, there were no Tampa Bay Lightning. There was no Tampa Bay Rays. There were no Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All there was spring baseball. And that was just 6-8 weeks out of the year. So it was wrestling, and we were the entertainment, and we were the athletes of the area. And there's no denying it. From the mayors on down, Florida Championship Wrestling, their athletes were the most sought after guys in town for public appearances and everything.
So that's really kind of interesting because, like you're saying, wrestlers were the celebrities. So how was it? Did you really have a hard time dealing with any of the fame or anything like that? Because obviously it's a pretty big step.
Yeah, and neither one of my brother and I really looked at it as fame. I mean, we tried to blend in. We were just two country boys from Oklahoma. I mean, we just being ourselves. And we never, I mean, you go to a restaurant, it's really nice to get treated special and all that stuff. But we never went to a place looking to be treated like that. We earn the respect to be treated like that, and people here in town got, like I said, looked up to the athletes in Florida Championship Wrestling, and they respected us. But it was you had your guys talk about today. Can't walk down an airport. Well, we didn't fly a lot, but we were in more visible in the city than these guys are because they can't be nowadays. But we were treated with respect, and you always had your people come up and want autographs and stuff like that. But you felt thankful for it because you were getting recognized, and it was nice. But to a point, then you'd have your privacy interrupted. But it is what it is. That's the price you pay for when you want to, be in the public.
Right, and it was interesting too that you said you didn't actively look out for special treatment or anything. It was just recently I heard a celebrity say, I just can't remember their name, but they said it's kind of like as soon as you're at the point where you don't need free things, everybody wants to give you everything, because they just love you so much and they don't really know how to express it. But
that's a true statement. And you kind of feel for those people that are doing that because they got nobody in their lives, and so people with passion, you understand that, and you work with them,
right.
So it's tough like that.
Yeah, it just reminds me of I read stories about how whenever Ric Flair was world champ and people would buy him all the shots at a bar or something, he'd throw all of them back. He's like, yeah, and then he would lean to the side and let all of it just spill out of his mouth. He's like, oh, great job. Just
that was the thing. You got so many drinks lined up, you're just tossing them over your shoulder, basically. And it's bad because people are spending their hard-earned money wanting to buy you a drink. But that's the reason you're pretending you're doing it. I mean, if you want to be an asshole, you just let them all sit there, But Rick and everybody else like that, I mean, you want to show your appreciation, so at least you toast them and you take a Swiss sip and you deposit the rest of it.
Right. But why is that plant in the corner suddenly dying? Like I don't understand. But so you mentioned a lot about Florida or Championship Wrestling in Florida, but it also became known as FCW. And just a quick story: when I was younger and started to get into wrestling, I was around in third grade. That was around 2007-ish, and everyone was talking about wrestling, and I was so far behind. So I went to a library and just checked out every wrestling book they had. But a lot of them are just literally the history of pro wrestling and things like that. So while everyone's watching John Cena and Batista and everything, I'm reading about the territories and like Vern Gagne and Jim Crockett. It's like, oh guys, look at this picture of Bob Backlund. Isn't he awesome? It's like who? It's just, but turns out, it's finally starting to become useful. But my point is,
well, it is, and I contribute that. It gets blasted a lot. I'm not happy with that transition. This is off the subject, but the WWE Network. I mean, showing all the classics and everything. I think that kind of got the young folks looking at the classic and appreciating some of these things that the guys did. The YouTube clip of Jack and Antone Anoki. I mean, you want to see how a real pro tie-up should be. Google that, and Jack Brisco and Antone Anoki locking up. I mean, that shows you the intensity that two great athletes should have when they hit the ring, and how to lock up. I mean, it's spectacular.
Antonio Inoki, obviously one of the greatest legends, did a lot for wrestling in Japan, I believe.
All over the world, but mostly Japan.
Just legendary booker. Dude, that's a really that's really interesting too, because I know Inoki had experience kind of. I don't know if it was amateur wrestling, but I know that he had like a little bit of fighting experience, and he was able to do a lot of stiff shots.
He had jiu-jitsu experience.
So that's a really interesting clash of style.
He had some MMA training too. But I'm not talking pre MMA days.
Right.
I'm talking right when I think he represented Japan in the Olympics at Greco-Roman. So he had some Greco-Roman, which is basically jiu-jitsu.
It's just really, it's about really being really far ahead too, because a lot of MMA really on a global platform didn't really start, I think, until like the late 90s.
Yeah.
So
it was just basically street fighting. So.
Yeah. For the longest time, it was just people doing wrestling and either wrestling or jiu-jitsu, like you said, that's just
they were tough man contests, is what they were.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. It's really just there's so much interesting stuff that goes into how people develop their wrestling craft. But so. Speaking of, when we were talking about Floor Championship Wrestling, so when I was getting into wrestling, my dad would actually talk about how when he grew up, he would watch Floor Championship Wrestling, because he grew up in Vero Beach, and we live in Plant City now.
Right.
So he would talk about, rave about like watching you and watching Dusty and Haystacks.
Vero Beach is where Hulk Hogan had his first appearance, his first audition.
I was actually going to talk to you about that later, about how you discovered him, but no, I did not know that it was in Vero.
Yeah.
But, so, how fondly do you just kind of look back at that time in your career? Because you were, I don't know if you know at the time, but literally wrestling some of the greatest stars of that entire era.
Well, you didn't realize you were wrestling great stars. You just knew you were wrestling great talent at the time.
Right.
And you didn't know, who or what was going to stand the test of time, but the talent assembly that Florida Championship Wrestling put together was really a who's who of professional wrestling. People love coming to Florida. I mean that's obvious to say. Our climate is beautiful, our beaches are gorgeous, and it's a great place to live. So
right.
When people come down here, it's hard to get them. And especially when Eddie Graham would bring a certain caliber of talent in. Guys who, like my brother and I, Bob Roop, guys like that who could take care of themselves and take care. He knew if he had a problem, an issue, he had Bob Roop, he had me, he had Jack, he had Billy Robinson. He had some of the guys that could handle their skill, Killer Carl Cox, and Dick Murdoch. He had guys like that that could handle themselves, and the fans appreciated the talent level. But you know, when you're in the ring with somebody and you're both in your 20s, you don't think about looking across the ring, that guy's a legend, or that guy's going to be a legend. No, you think about, man, let's have a good match tonight. Let's not kill each other. You
know? What is kind of the biggest difference, would you say, of crowds from then to now? Because it's almost like just not even just crowds, but the overall presentation.
Crowds back then didn't know as much as crowds know today. Today's crowd are the most educated crowd. I mean, not of the and you know, I'm talking about not your casual TV viewer. I'm talking about somebody that buys a ticket, goes to a room, and sits down and watches the matches at a live event. Those people are so much more educated now and have so much more knowledge. Not only about those people in the ring wrestling there, but most of them have done research and knows about guys like me, knows about guys like my brother, you know, and they know a little bit about it. Those are your fans that, you know, that I think we're losing a lot of because of the soundbite matches we're having and, you know, and the quickness of them. And, you know, when we were going, we had time to go out and tell people the story and draw them emotionally into the match. And very few of those guys have that opportunity now. And that's a shame, you know, for them to lose that skill of, you know, because like we had your dad emotionally involved with us because he knew that we were going to go out and kick ass. He knew he was going to see a wrestling match when he saw the Brisco brothers.
Right.
And so, you know, nowadays, you know, you're going to be entertained when you see John Cena, but, you know, you don't get that same feeling as, you know, as your dad did. Well, he's going to see some ass kicking tonight, and, well, John Cena, he's going to make me laugh, and we're going to have a great time. And I love John Cena. I think John Cena's a great performer, and I think John Cena would have got over back in my day bigger than hell, too, you know, because he's an athlete and can go. But it's not that same emotion. It's not that same what we called heat. I mean, there's a different type of heat. We had heat, and they got interest now, you know.
Right. One thing that I often make a case for, too, is I think overexposure has also kind of set in for a lot of people, too, and it's just kind of fatigued, because, you know, they mention all the time about how they never take any breaks off, which is really admirable for all the talent, and obviously everyone respects the talent, but when you're taking no breaks off, you're also continuously producing content, and they're just adding more and more shows. So, and back then, where you are, like we've said, with limited technology and stuff, you know, whenever you go to a crowd.
You know, you're saying that, and this is 2021. In 1983, when cable for TV first came out, at what, 40 years ago?
Yes, sir.
I was hearing this exact same thing.
Really?
Yeah. Cable TV is going to kill the wrestling business. Cable TV is going to run wrestling. And all it did was get bigger and bigger and bigger. I heard the saying, it's overexposed. You can watch cable TV and get wrestling every night of the week, and you could, just about, you know. But that was the promoter's biggest fear, was cable TV, when cable TV started coming out. And we proved them all right when we made the sale events, but that's another story.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's a good point, too, because WWE, you know, at this point is, I believe, the most profitable kind of it's been. And that's a lot of it is coming from those TV deals, because...
Well, exactly. It's a TV industry. It always, I mean, we had to pay for our TV. We've been, when we were at Florida Championship Wrestling, part of the promotion, we paid for our TV. We bartered. We gave them half of the commercial time, and we took half the commercial time. Their half of commercial time, they'd sell, of course, the sponsor, and our part would promote local shows. That was the barter agreement we had. But there was a price to be aired on the TV over in Vero Beach. There was a price to be paid on TV here in Tampa.
Right, and that's really interesting, too, because, as you just mentioned, you wrestled a bit before, you know, this transition to... the introduction of a wide use of television for a lot of people. So how much did that affect your industry and the companies that you were working with?
The advent of cable TV.
Yes, and just kind of more broadcast options and stuff.
In places that were established like Florida and the Carolinas, it really didn't hurt that much because they had special talent and a great promotion going on. But your borderline, your Kansas Cities and your Tennessees, some of your Tennessees and some of the western states that didn't have solid promotion. The territories that were solid in the beginning, they were okay, and it was the NWA Alliance, so they could send some of their talent and be on that cable TV out of Atlanta and get their guys over too, like national stars. So, as long as it was being a cooperative type deal, it wasn't hurting. But the established territories, for the first few years, cable didn't bother. It just wasn't, when Vince and everybody started wanting to go nationally, that's when it started. There was a time frame, probably a 10-year time frame from when cable hit until the demise came.
And it was really interesting that you brought up Vince McMahon too, because my thought process is nothing shook really the industry more besides maybe the introduction of Hulk Hogan. But Vince McMahon coming in and getting the territories and stuff too. When you and your brother sold your shares of Georgia Championship Wrestling to Mr. McMahon, did you ever think that the WWE or the WWF, as it is known, would become as gigantic as it has?
Well, I didn't. I'd be lying to you if I said, I knew it would happen. I didn't think it'd be that big globally, but nationally, we were seeing the same things that Vince Jr. was seeing. My brother and I were, but we had partners that were old school and loyal to the NWA that didn't want to make that move and didn't want to piss off the other promoters. Like I said, they were an alliance, and they worked together on talent and everything. But my brother and I, we'd kind of seen the opportunity. At Turner Superstation, when it hit, TBS hit nationally on cable and opened up, started having this new Superstation, the Superstation. Everybody in the world was tuning to the Superstation, and then Saturday night and Sunday night wrestling on TBS was the #1 rated show. And all of the United States. So we saw that opportunity, but we just had partners that didn't see it or didn't want to risk the friendship and the capital to do something like that. And Vince did.
Yeah, that just really shows the importance of having an innovative mind and. We knew it was going to be big nationally, but I didn't have a clue it was going to be, so global,
Right. And that's all Vince. That's all to his credit. To be the branding of WWE globally like that, in the States, because I won't say it's easy because it's not easy, but. It's a limited area, and if you go in, you sell it right, you're going to get it, So and you have the vehicle to get there with TBS, but he started from fresh on and international and built that in, like I said, a global empire.
Yeah, it's incredibly just so widespread, and even with that you can see that with the WrestleMania, it's been held in Canada but mostly in the U.S. But it's a global phenomenon. People fly in really from everywhere.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm really sad about for Tampa, that we didn't have the Bay Area really hasn't got to experience the true WrestleMania experience, because the damn pandemic has took our international or global fans away. And I do all those fan fest things for WWE
right.
when during WrestleMania week. My favorite thing is sitting at that table and asking people where they're from. They're from all over the friggin' world. I mean, it's amazing. I love sitting there. Where are you from? How many WrestleManias you been to? And I'm shocked. Some people, 20, and they're kids,
Yeah.
but they've been to 15, 20 WrestleManias all over the damn world. But they plan their whole year around that. And because of our coronavirus, I don't think Tampa got to experience a real feeling of a WrestleMania week.
Yeah, that was really just tragic. But one thing I was fairly surprised about was that how it was supposed to be held here last year, but I was surprised that they were able to just bring it right back, because they usually negotiate for that.
You know what happened? I mean, surely you know what happened. This is what they're supposed to be in L.A., in that new arena in L.A., but the pandemic has closed down sports in California, so they couldn't hold it in California, so they moved it back to Tampa.
It's just really funny.
So this is basically L.A.'s WrestleMania.
Yeah, this is just, the pandemic's really just had such a huge impact on the industry, but it seems kind of, even though the wrestling industry's been hit by it, at least they were able to adapt faster than most, working like empty arena matches and things like that.
Yeah, so. Well, I really think WWE just has the most innovative people. I mean, and I don't work for the company anymore, so right. I'm not kissing anybody's ass, but that production crew, that TV department that WWE has, I mean, it's the envy of the
industry.
There, it really is, because they're so far ahead, and they're so far ahead on innovation. There's so many creative minds there on the TV side. I got an education from Oklahoma State, but I got a damn PhD working for 36 years at WWE and WWF. I mean, it's amazing, if you take the time. I mean, I learned TV, I learned international promotions, I learned international bookings, I learned, so much from that organization. It was an education working there because of the people that surrounded him with. And as you always hear, you're a college student, you always hear what? Surround yourself with your best people, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's what Vince McMahon did. He surrounded himself with the top people in every form of entertainment, put them all under one roof. And he said, okay, I want you guys to come together. This is the vision. Let's do it. And those damn guys went out and did it. If they couldn't do the job, he got rid of them, got somebody else. But he got a lot of heat for that. But that's a businessman. You get the best people in there. If you think you got the best and he's not the best, you get rid of him and you get the guys in there. That is the best. That's how Vince does business. That's the reason he's so damn successful.
Well, you seem to have been one of the right guys, because you retired in '85 and joined pretty quickly as a road agent, and you were very long tenured. I think one of the more longer tenured workers in the company.
You know what, and people that been around him know this. Vince don't surround himself by yes people, and I disagreed with him, and I had verbal arguments with him because I didn't agree with a lot of stuff, and and he didn't agree with me, and the guys that stick around with Vince the longest are the guys who disagree with Vince the most, probably.
It seems the only exception really was Paul Heyman.
Yeah, well, Paul's a kiss ass, but Paul also will argue his point. If he has a really strong point he wants to make, Paul's not going to just take an ass chewing and walk out without saying his piece there. Paul's been around a long time. And like I said, Paul's not an ass kisser, but he's a smart enough man to know what hill to die on.
Right. It's funny you said that, because I was watching his documentary not too long ago, and he said that when talking with Vince McMahon in creative, that was one of his biggest problems, was that he wanted to die on every hill and eventually realized like if he just keeps doing that, because Vince supposedly said to him, I love that you disagree. I love having different perspective. And then Paul's like, well, it turns out after a while it kind of gets annoying.
Well, it does. I mean, they're two different characters, and one has different beliefs, and you can't disagree with the boss in any profession constantly 24/7. He's the boss for a reason.
Oh, definitely. So how much did you really? Obviously, you were kind of gushing about how much you had learned and stuff, but how much did you really enjoy your time in the WWE compared to other promotions? Because with WWE, you're mostly working in a backstage role, so you obviously adapt to that. But I feel like with a more relaxed environment, in terms of not having to go out and wrestle every night, you can kind of settle down a bit and really just kind of live in the moment.
Yeah, I really enjoyed my time, but probably the easy and probably the most successful time that I had really was when my brother and I went to Carolinas. We turned heel on Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. And I had my birth of my first son, so I was walking on cloud
Wesley?
for, at West, the first year, so, and plus we were just, red hot in that damn Carolinas and selling out every night everywhere we went. So that was, and it was, working with, Steamboat and Youngblood. It was like a night off. It was, you didn't. You went out and you put in the effort because you wanted to have a great match. And you wanted to keep up with those two young dudes. So you worked your ass off, but it wasn't that where you're battling to do something, because the story had been told, and we used one of the simplest things in the world to get heat with, and that was to have an issue about, and that was about the championship belt. That was about the Jack and I never had. We told people that we're going to quit when we win these things, and that was our plan, to win them and quit. Of course, you got to have the rematches and drop them and all that stuff, but that was all part of the program, and the people bought into that, and they knew that, to achieve that goal, we would wrestle any means necessary. So if we got to kick their ass illegally, we'll do it. But that was probably one of the most enjoyable times I ever had. I think it was some of the best work for me personally I ever did, especially with my promos. And I could be a smart-ass little brother, and have a killer big brother there to back me up on everything. So it was easy. It was natural. And so that was probably the most relaxed and non-pressure. Working backstage at WWE was an education that I'll never forget, and I've always appreciated it. But you talk about stress and pressure, brother. It's stress and pressure back there. You're dealing with live time. You're dealing with live people with families and history behind them. So there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of pressure. Number one to make sure the talent's happy, and all the talent's not going to be happy all the time. So I was saying, you fool some of the people some of the time, but not all people all the time, or whatever the hell. It's the same with talent. You can make some of the talent happy some of the time, but you can make all the talent happy all the time. But it was a stressful period, and but I loved every minute of it. But it was so damn stressful. It's unbelievable. It's hard to describe what some of the pressures were, and some of them were just minor little things, but they were details that you knew the boss wanted done, so you had to get it done.
It just adds up, type of thing. So with all that stress, how did you keep a positive mind on the road? Not just as a road agent, but even as a younger guy throughout your wrestling career.
As a family man, it was hard. Sometimes it was hard not to bring work home with me, because you always had work. When I first started in the office, My phone sometimes would ring at 7 a.m. and it'd be Vance wanting to ask me a question on why I did this. And I hadn't even got up and read the agent report yet. And he's already read the agent report and had his first cup of coffee and caffeined up, and he's ready. Why'd you do this? We didn't talk about that. Well, I changed it because the talent thought it was the best. Okay, well, I'm just checking. Let me know, and I mean, it was 24/7 with him,
Right.
And, but you know what? I made that commitment, and I fulfilled that commitment, and I'm proud of the work I did.
Yeah, it's Vince McMahon goes to bed at 3 a.m., but he wakes up at 2. And they're like,
yeah, exactly. Sleep is your enemy.
We've talked about how much teaming with your brother has meant to you, how important it was, but, even given all of that, did you kind of enjoy your singles run a little bit more just because you felt kind of like, oh, this is an individual accomplishment, like I did this, or
yeah, I did. It wasn't I did this. It was, I needed to do this,
okay.
And Roddy Piper, he asked me a question, your brother's awesome, how do you keep up with him? I said, well, I appreciate you comparing me with him, saying I keep up with him, but, there's sometimes you have to got to override your want to, and I was saying, I had to mentally for my sake, work hard and get over, and handle it, so it was the same working with Vince, I just had to, I'm a pride guy too, just like he is. I'm very proud of my work, very proud of how I handle myself, and so I'm a stubborn. He always called me one of the most stubborn people he ever worked with, and I agreed with him. I said my wife told me the same thing, so it's nothing I hadn't heard. But I was with him 36 years, so must have done something right.
Right. Yeah, that's just. It's really interesting that you talk about just the kind of the amount of pride you feel, because even as a student, like, admittedly, my first few semesters at school, I didn't take it as seriously because I didn't understand the gravity.
Sound familiar?
But then it's like you just realize what changed really my perspective was the realization that this is what I'm putting out into the world, and even if it doesn't really matter that much in like maybe 5 or 10 years, it's this is what you're contributing to the world.
Who knows, Ryan, what
yeah,
5 or 10 years.
But it's what you're contributing, and you should to the world. Like, this is your contribution to society. It's like you should take pride in it. So I think that's definitely a really good mentality to have for success, and clearly it seemed to work for you, because you won quite a few titles and were quite successful. Were there any ones that really specifically kind of stood out for you?
Well, I as a kid, the title that Danny Hodge was my hero. I mean, we in the same area of Oklahoma, separated about 15 miles. So I was really aware of Hodge all my life, and Hodge was my hero. Hodge was junior heavyweight champion of the world. I wanted to be junior heavyweight champion of the world. I won the title, and I was so proud that I finally, because that was one of my goals when I started in the business, and I finally achieved that goal. And Dusty Rhodes was the first one to hit the ring, because he knew what it meant to me. Dusty Rhodes was the first one to hit the ring when I won, followed by my brother and the rest of the guys in the back that were so happy. So that's really the single moment I remember, and I'm very proud of, very honored to have. And like I said, Dusty being the first one out to congratulate me. But probably, like I said in the earlier part of it, Jack and I's goal when we went to Carolina, we'd never had a world tag team belts, and that was the only thing we hadn't had worldwide. So we went there to do that and win the world championship with him, tag team championship with him. It is a memory that I'll cherish forever, because he and I did it together. And we weren't, and that's where, people get it so wrong. We weren't Brisco brother tag team forever in our career. Mm-hmm. We just, we just did that towards the end of our career. But it just so happened that, you know, there were angles going around the country that we would fill in, get in, and the promoters liked it, our work, and so we would end up with the championships. But, you know, and then we'd drop them some. But our goal wasn't to be a tag team. Our goal was to be great single guys. And we not only accomplished that, but we accomplished being one of the most talked about tag teams ever do.
Yeah, that's just really interesting too, because even growing up, you know, when I would read the textbooks, it was always like the Brisco brothers, but you know, as I further developed, I realized the individual success. But you had mentioned earlier that you and your brother had kind of made like a tentative plan to team up later on.
Yeah, towards the end of our career, which that's what we did.
Was that kind of like, did you have like an idea that, you know, your body couldn't hold up forever, so it would be smarter to take some weight off both of yourselves like later on, or was it just kind of like, oh, you know, I really just want to focus on myself?
That really had nothing to do with it. It just had, you know, just the thing, you know, we wanted those belts. We as far as taking weight off of ourselves, that's where I think we stood out and were different. Jack and I were businessmen. I mean, we always invested. I mean, every place I went, every city I went, I bought real estate. Jack bought real estate. We were investing in with Brisco Brothers Body Shop.
Right.
We had like over 70 houses at one time throughout the United States that we owned. You know, so that's how we were going to take stress off of our bodies at the end of our career and retire on that. You know, not retire on being a tag team. No.
Right. So your brother Jack famously feuded with the Funks, and you both did as well. But there was that kind of infamous moment where I guess Dory Funk Jr. was supposed to drop the title to Jack, but said that he got in a car accident or a truck accident, couldn't do it, and so there's all this back and forth on whether or not he really got into an accident, or that Dory Funk Sr. just didn't want to drop the title. So what do you think, or what are your impressions of what happened?
Well, my feelings back then was I thought it was the Montreal Screwjob original, you know. And, but, you know, after several years, and Jack even, you know, after a few years, I mean, and that was part of the competitive feud of the Funk and Briscos, and that's part of the legend of the Funks and Briscos. So, in the beginning, I thought it was a work, of course, but after, you know, talking with Dory and even Jack and everything, you know, who's to know? And I'm not gonna. I got too much respect for Dory at this point in our lives just to rekindle a feud and say you were lying and you screwed my brother. You know, what's it worth? I mean, you know, it is what it is. It happened. It's part of the legend. It enhanced the legend. And it helped the legend. It helped us draw money for years and years with the Funks and Briscos.
Well, clearly, I mean, it's one of the most celebrated feuds. But it was something you really said just now was really interesting. You said kind of at this time we don't have, like, I'm just not going to take the energy to talk about things like that. How do you all deal with kind of like the journalism and I guess historical aspect, because even though you guys move on kind of with your lives and your careers and do other avenues, a lot of people just wrestling and those memories are forever cemented kind of like into their daily thought. So how do you really just kind of not necessarily combat, but just deal with like people asking you all of these different things about like all these past feuds that you've kind of just moved on from?
Well, I always appreciate fans asking me questions because that means they were interested in my career. That means they followed my career a little bit. They know a lot about it. So those are the fans that I'll take the time to talk to, that I'll take the time to answer their questions. It's these fans that, these young fans that come up, don't have a clue about anything and ask me a stupid question, and you know what a stupid question is when you hear it, and they know that it's a stupid question when they're asking it. But, if you're going to approach one of these guys, at least have an intelligent question to ask them. You'll probably get an intelligent answer back. And, I love my fans, and I'm shocked that I'm still, my wife and I kind of laugh about it. I get probably 30 to 60 letters with trading cards and action figures and stuff like that a month that I'll sit down once a month and I'll go through every one of them and I'll personally sign every damn one of them, take them to the mailbox, put them back in the mailbox. But still to this day, I can look over on my desk right now and see a stack of envelopes that's probably 30 high, which means I got knee replacement coming up next week that I better sign before I get that done because I don't know if I'll feel like signing.
Oh, right. Well, I definitely hope that goes well.
Thank you.
I'm sure all the fans definitely appreciate it because it really is just nice when people take time out of their day. Not even just last week, I saw someone tweeted, "Oh, my son's getting bullied" and stuff. He tweeted at Edge, Mr. Copeland, and Edge's response "Oh yeah, I'll send a quick video" and things like that, and it's really very kind of people like you that have that platform to really go out of your way to be kind to every fan and be really appreciative because a lot of people don't do it. So definitely on behalf of all the fans, we're incredibly grateful for all you do with that.
Well, I really appreciate that, and it's an obligation. And Ed is a fine young man, and that's the thing. Wrestlers have had a black eye for so long, but there are so many quality people in the business that was in the business during my time, and there was some pretty damn shady, damn ass characters in my business too during my time and during this time now. But you know what? That's the general population of the country. In every business, there's assholes and there's heroes. And they're every walk of life. So I like to think we have our overabundant share of heroes that care about the kids and care about things like bullying and stuff like that and categorizing people. I'm proud of our talent. I'm proud of the direction that these guys have gone. Do I love all the matches I see on TV? Hell no, I don't. I didn't back in my day either.
Right.
But am I going to criticize them? This is the style that you better get used to right now because it's the one that the people are tuning in to see. And people say, and like Will Rogers used to say about the weather in Oklahoma. If you don't like the weather in Oklahoma, stick around for 5 minutes and it'll change. Well, stick around this business for 5 years and it'll change.
We're approaching the hour mark. I had a few more questions, but I didn't know if you needed to. If there's anything you needed to do.
Well, let's do a couple of more. And your most pertinent one. I'll stick with you about 15 more minutes.
That's perfect. I really appreciate it. So, you joined the WWE as a backstage worker road agent in '85, but then, suddenly in the late '90s after the screw job, you and Pat Patterson's the Stooges really just have a career like resurgence. Was that something you were ever really expected to happen, and how grateful are you for that period in your life too? Because you guys were one of the best acts in the whole company for throughout that time.
Well, thank you. I've been told that a lot, but it happened by accident, just purely by accident, and that's how most really good things happen. We just stumbled upon it. And was it written to be that way? No. Was it talked about to do that? No. It just happened because Pat and I had a reputation of being so close to Vince. Pat and I were think of in the early days of WWF. Patterson Brisco, Vince's right-hand man, and we were with him all the time. And so, Stone Cold started coming along, and so it just, I remember the first night that, we kind of got classified as Vince's stooges or Vince's JR, because JR didn't want to use the word stooges in the beginning. You always use, you go back and listen, JR always got Patterson, Brisco, McMahon's associates.
Right.
And because of the respect level that guys had for us, didn't want to call us stooges, But we were in Chicago, and Stone Cold had done something, so Vince said, come on, we got to have a corporate meeting. You guys, come on here and yell out. So all of a sudden, we became part of Vince corporate, and me and Pat, we went over in a room to close the door, and it said corporation meeting, or something like that. I forgot what the hell. But anyway, we did the little 2-minute skit, and it just, the chemistry between the three of us would just it worked, and and then back in there we were competing with Nitro, so we were getting like, every 5-minute ratings. You see what spiked what. You see who spiked what, when it spiked, and why it spiked. And so when we came on, the ratings started spiking, and the next week we had another little bit piece with that, and it spiked again, and then it just kept growing, and it was just purely by accident. And then they started writing it in, and it's just, I think what the demise was of the Stooges was, Vince was going against Rock and Stone Cold, and they wanted him as the sheer badass guy, but Pat and I started getting over with baby faces, so we thought it was taking some heat off of Vince's character. So it was time to separate the funny guys, the funny old guys, from the mean old tired boss. And so I think that was our demise. We got over too damn good.
Right. Well, was that also around the time? Because I know that you and Patterson both started to get involved with the hardcore title a little bit. Was that kind of a little bit after the?
No, that was basically during the time where that was the time that we were starting to get over, because we're being goofy and funny, and we started getting over. It was weird. You can walk out in those arenas in Pennsylvania or somewhere, New York or Boston, and look up in the rafters and see all these stooges signed, Brisco and Patterson. It was what the hell, and consider the talent roster: Dwayne Johnson, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, everybody, and we were getting over. We had the highest rating of Monday Night Raw ever,
Who wants to see Austin versus Rock when you can see Patterson and Brisco in an evening gown match,
Yeah, no kidding. Well, we won't talk about that, because that wasn't one of the exact highlights of it.
This seems like a Mr. McMahon idea if I've ever seen one.
I blame Michael Hayes, but Vince likes to take credit for it, so it was Vince's deal.
Getting to work with the WWE for so long, how much did you look forward, to WrestleMania every year, and just how much did you enjoy kind of that time of the year? Because there's definitely an extra added layer of pressure, but, it's WrestleMania, so.
Truthfully, I hated it.
Really?
I couldn't wait for the week to be over with. You can't explain to to anybody unless they've experienced it, how much pressure they're on is that week and how little time you actually have during the week. And it's not only that week, it's a couple of weeks leading up to it. So that night when that countdown comes, you hear that countdown, okay, on air, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now the wrestling starts. Now that pressure's off. Now all you got to do is your job, and your job, not everybody else's job. So, once that bell rings, it's the greatest event in the friggin' world, and I love it to death. But that the preparation leading up to it is the most pressure filled lead up you can have in that business.
I imagine so. I'm just, even the normal schedule with everything is just so difficult. But, I feel like a lot of people just put an individual weight kind of on them at that time. Like, what can I do? What do I need to do?
Everybody's stepping forward with that attitude. What can I do to make this better? What can I do? I mean, that's the great thing, and that's what makes WrestleMania is everybody's coming forward with their best thoughts, and the production that event of that week is truly a team effort. It takes from the security to the referee to the ring crew to the announcer to the catering to everybody to make that week what it's become, and they have the most skilled people to do it. So it's truly a team effort. This isn't just this is Vince McMahon or this is Triple H or this is Stephanie. The WrestleMania is truly a team effort. I mean, it's everybody in the truck, everybody carrying a camera, everybody carrying a microphone. I mean, it's entire crew coming together with their best suggestions and their best thoughts on how to make this thing flawless, and they do it a lot of times. I mean, do they miss? Hell yes, they do. But you can go look back, and the majority of times they hit. So.
Right. That's just so true that I think a lot of people don't appreciate just the amount of sheer manpower and effort that goes into hosting that event every year. But so I know you said that the build-up was something you didn't enjoy, but that you really liked the show. So focusing more so on that positive aspect, what are some of your favorite WrestleMania moments that you had the opportunity to see?
Well, there's so many of them, but I got some favorite matches, of course, just like everybody else does, and I got some favorite times, and I WrestleMania, I believe 15 was Austin and Brett. I think that was a game changer match that night, and that when Stone Cold really becomes Stone Cold, and it started hitting it big.
Oh, I love WrestleMania 13. Yep.
Whatever it was. Yeah, I love that. I mean, when you work all of them, they all run together.
No doubt.
And I loved, of course. I loved watching Kurt Angle hitting Kurt and Shawn Michaels match at WrestleMania out in L.A. was awesome. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in the Iron Man match, my kind of match, and I just loved that one to death. I thought that was one of the best ones. Brock and Kurt, out in Seattle, that was a game changing evening there. And Undertaker, a lot of Undertaker appearances, a lot of Undertaker entrances that were breathtaking to me. And so, there's so many outstanding moments that I'm forgetting a lot of them, of course, but those are just some of the stands. The Iron Man Angle and Shawn and just about anybody during the later part of his real great run there.
That main event.
The guy's one of the greatest of all time, and even recently, I just. Edge and Orton. The match that they had last year, that whatever they call it, telephonic match or whatever the word. Cinematic match. Yeah, I thought that was spectacular. The effort, people don't realize how hard. I mean, the intensity level those two guys took was just phenomenal, and people don't realize how hard, especially if you're not getting any feedback or any noise from what you're doing, and to keep that intensity level up and that story going. To me, those guys just showed what kind of true masters they really are. And I love anything that Ed's does. I love anything that Randy Orton does. And I think Cesaro is one of the greatest performers that they've ever had in that WWE ring.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you also just picked three guys, that can really just slide into any and every role that you need him to. Like, oh, you need me to be a face? Oh, that's fine. You need me to be a heel? That's fine. You need me to cut a 10-minute promo? That's fine.
I believe the reason why they've stepped up like that, and the way why they really, to me, they've taken another step in their already fantastic career. But my true thought on this, and this is just my thought, is these guys, nowadays, and I'm not blasting nowadays, but guys work for pops. They want to get the reaction of a pop. They want to get the constant pop. Randy and Edge and Cesaro, they came up that old school way where, there's no people in there. And you go back, you flash back to the old Florida Championship Wrestling that your dad and you watch it as a kid over in Vero Beach. The audience at the Sportatorium, we sometimes had 15, 20 people in there. So it wasn't like we were getting a 20,000, fan pop and ooh and all that stuff. So we basically had to work, on feel. And I think that's why Randy and Edge and Cesaro said I'm good, because they know how to work on feel. And so they're working on their own pop. They're working on their internal pop. They're not working on some fans pop that's delayed, So they're able to just keep that transition rolling and rolling and rolling without waiting for that big pop. I mean, they give it a chance to react over TV, but it's you can tell by their body language. Just move on. They're not waiting for that big pop. They're just waiting how their body feels, their own body pop. And time to move on. So I think their psychology is just really shown why they're so damn good.
Definitely some of the best to ever do it. Just a couple of more questions. When I was asking about the WrestleMania moment, I was kind of, how much did it mean to you being able to stand next to Jack, especially in Orlando, in Florida, where the state that you've done so much, and being inducted into the Hall of Fame and being recognized on such a large scale for your accomplishments and contributions?
It was thrilling, Orlando, through the years. I mean, so good, my brother and I. I mean, business-wise and professional-wise, it's just a wonderful place, and it's kind of home away from home here in Tampa over to Orlando, and to go in. You ask anybody, I mean, family's what it's all about. You go in with your brother, I mean, you can't get any better than that. And to me, that was better than going in by myself,
Right.
So, going in and sharing the night with my brother. And he was so proud, and, that was kind of towards the end of his life. And, and it was kind of, it was just emotional for me, knowing that what his health condition was, and seeing him battle through his health issues for that 2 days that he was in Orlando, and muster up the energy and the strength to finish the weekend off there. So it was an emotional time. It was a great time. It was a time that my family, when I was doing all this stuff, even the Stooges stuff, my kids were still young. And so they didn't, they kind of knew, I was Gerald Brisco, but they didn't know the full scope of it until that weekend, and they got to experience, what the old man was all about, So I'm proud that they got to experience, because like I said, when I was doing all my stuff, I mean, most of my stuff in the early days, they weren't even born yet, but, even as, like I said, as the Stooges, they were young. I mean, Wes was a teenager and Joe was, and Joe couldn't understand why people were booing me. It really upset And so when I finally broke it down, I said, "This is why," because that's my job.
So,
that WrestleMania moment during the Hall of Fame, I had friends fly out all the way from Arizona and to attend it, and so it was a special weekend.
That's a very nice. And you mentioned your son's going to the event too, and I know that your son Wes is also a wrestler, and he wrestled with FCW. And when I was younger, I watched him wrestle in TNA and Impact and those companies. How much did it really mean to you seeing him kind of follow in your footsteps, even with that disconnect of, not necessarily understanding the contributions that and impact you had on the industry?
Well, I'm very proud of both of my sons and what they've done. And Wes has really worked hard. He's struggled. Unfortunately he's had some untimely injuries that's delayed his progression and all that stuff. And one right before they were supposed to be on 3 months of solid TV with the main roster, but that's the way the business is. That's the cards he was dealt, and he's a strong young man. He realizes that the card just didn't fall the right way for him, and but he carried on the name and carried on the tradition, and from what I understand, he's a hell of a locker room leader, and I'm proud of when I hear stuff like that, because that's where it counts, and the respect from your peers and everything. And from what I understand, he has a tremendous amount of respect. And what I've seen from guys that are on the main roster that are main event in WrestleMania that he trained with have the same feelings about him. So I know he's a good man, and I know he's a good person. And the same with my younger son, Joe. A USF graduate now. He's taking a master's course in landscape architect from the University of Florida. So he's a hard worker, and he was both of them were good, solid high school wrestlers and good, solid kids. So I'm proud of both my boys.
That's
my wife did a hell of a job while I was out playing on the road.
That's
playing Stooge on the road.
That's very nice to hear. I know I said it twice already, but now it's very few questions. Sorry, I know this was supposed to be an hour, but what is it like knowing that you and Jack kind of completely shook the wrestling industry twice, especially, not just selling those Georgia shares to Hulk Hogan, but to Vince McMahon rather, but also you two discovered Hulk Hogan. So what is it like kind of knowing that you had such a tremendous impact in those two regards?
Well, I don't, I really don't know how to answer that question, because I don't really realize to myself that I made an impact. I mean, I know I made changes with the business, and I know I introduced some mighty good talent, from Hulk Hogan to Brock Lesnar to some new kids that I just recently got signed that are going to be major stars. I know I've contributed to that. That's why I look at it. I've contributed to this business, and I think I earned my keep, and I'm proud of my accomplishments, and I'm proud of my time there, and I know what I contributed, and I'm one of the few fortunate ones that saw a mom and pop local Connecticut business turn into a global empire, and I've been a major player in that. I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of the company.
Incredibly important role with the bringing in talent. What are some professional experiences, or what's some experience you've had health-wise throughout kind of your career, and how have you seen the treatment and medical care of workers improve over time?
Well, I blew my knee out in Miami, Florida. I'd just come down, made the move from Carolina down to Florida, and just getting ready to start. And I was in the ring with a guy that just passed away with a great legendary Buddy Coat, and I was going to put the figure 4 on him, and I middle of the card and the match before me, the match got loose, and back in those days they didn't even tighten up the match or anything. So I went to put the figure 4 on Buddy Coat, and my foot got caught in the mat, and it stayed. My foot stayed, but my body and my knee went the other direction. So it ripped my knee out. So we had no medical care. We had no, we had our own personal insurance, but the company, they didn't pay for injuries. So, and I just moved down here, spent my money, left Carolina where I was making great money, and brought my wife down here, my future wife down here. Just got an apartment, and here the next day I go to the doctor. The doctor told me I'm going to be out for 4 to 6 months. Oh man, what am I going to do? And so. So we had no medical care at the arena or anything like that. Usually the guys in the back were your doctors. They're the ones that stitched you up. They're the ones that taped you up, and we had no trainer. There was no such thing, And nowadays there's 2 athletic trainers, 2 certified athletic trainers, 1 or 2. I mean, at WrestleMania there'll probably be at least a half dozen MDs there, along with probably a half dozen certified athletic trainers there, and then also neurology people there, for the head injuries and anything like that to take a look at talent. So, as we saw when the King Jerry Lawler, my dear friend, had a heart attack on live TV in Canada. We had a doctor within 3 foot of Jerry, and if we hadn't, Jerry might not be with us today. But that doctor immediately went to work on Jerry and saved his life right there on TV. So medical care, and that's all credit to the company. And so, they have plenty of medical staff on hand, and that's something I really, really like about the changes that's happened in our business. These guys are taken care of medical-wise, whether it's a sprained ankle, a broken finger or what, there's medical team there to take care of you.
Yeah, it's really, like you said, just so nice to see the industry improving in that regard. You hear all those horror stories, even within just the last 30 years, and just all the improvements that have been made have been so nice to see in this industry. My father actually had 2 names he wanted to ask you about.
Fire away.
Mr. Mark Bureau and Reverend Billy C. Wirtz. He was wondering if you were familiar with either 2 of those.
I'm familiar with their names, but I'll probably cross paths with them. But forgive me, I don't have a story or specific memory about them. But
no, it's completely fine.
There's so many guys that you cross paths with.
Right. It was funny. I'd asked him before,
especially Billy Wirtz. That sounds like I should know him.
He has a musician. He does a radio show for WMNF as well, out of Tampa. But
that's probably where I heard the name.
Right. But anyways, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And I'm sorry I kept you much longer than anticipated.
Well, that's okay. In life you'll learn. You reached out to me. You're professional. You're polite, and I don't answer. You can follow my line. I get so many questions. Do this, do that, do this. And you're local. You're a journalism writer, and hell, why not? You're a young guy trying to do better in school and trying to do something and tell a little bit of history on what I did. And I'm happy that you reached out to me to do it. Thank you.
No thanks necessary.
And tell your old man hello and tell him I hope I entertain him over at the beach. I love going over there. It's a beautiful 200-mile drive, 130-mile drive through Yeehaw Junction right down 60, one of the most historic highways in the state of Florida. There's probably got more wrestling stories happen on that Highway 60 going to Vero Beach or going to the Florida Turnpike from Tampa than any other highway in Florida.
Well, I'd love to hear even more about them some other time.
A lot of ribs were pulled on that highway.
I really look forward to...
Because there's nothing out there. You can play all you want.
That's... I would really greatly appreciate that if we could talk again later. Because you
all
obviously...
Right, well, good luck on this. So what are we going to be in? Is it the paper? Is it the story for something or what?
Currently, right now, when my original plan was to publish it through the USF school paper, but I didn't hear any feedback, so I talked to my professor, and she said to just go to a ton of local papers in different avenues, so I reached out to a few different papers and some websites, and I've heard back from Creative Loafing, and they said that they were interested in the story.
Yeah, Creative Loafing's good, and is it like Gazetta still around? We were pretty popular with them for years.
Oh,
too.
Creative Loafing? Yes, sir. They are...
is that the La Gazetta, too?
Excuse me?
The La Gazetta.
The La Gazetta? Yes, it is.
We did a lot of stuff for them. And I tell you, the local guy, Paul Guzzo, Paul's a good friend of mine. You might touch bases with him on social media or something and reach out and tell him what you got.
Would you mind texting me that name? You said
Paul Guzzo, Cuzzo.
Oh, okay, great.
He's a Times writer.
Okay, yeah,
he's the one that just wrote those recent stories.
Oh yes, I just read those yesterday. They were well done.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's done several stories on me.
Oh well, fantastic. I'll get in touch with him as well.
Okay, well, good luck to you, young man, and keep me informed on what these things are doing, okay?
Yes, sir, will do. I'll send you any text messages with any updates.
Who else did you interview?
Excuse me?
Who else did you interview?
I've interviewed you. I interviewed Mr. T.J. Wilson. He wrestled as Tyson Kidd.
Yeah, I know T.J. Yeah, great kid.
Tremendous. He was so nice. I interviewed Mr. Mark Marrow. As well. And then yesterday, I interviewed Mr. Nikita Koloff.
Oh, awesome. A good guy there.
Yeah, he was tremendous. And then he actually put me in touch with a couple of other talents. Lodi, who he wrestled with WCW.
Yeah.
And then he also put me in touch with Jackson Ryder. He's in... He wrestled in TNA and stuff as Gunner. His real name is
I know the name.
Chad Lale.
Yeah, I know the name. I tell you, you maybe reach out to Brian Blair. He's a politician. He's always got a mouthful of words.
Sounds great. Brian Blair?
Yeah.
I'm writing that down now.
He was Hillsborough County Commissioner, and on top of that, the Killer Bees.
Oh, okay, yeah. That would be... Great, I'll get his information and things as well.
Okay, cool. All right, well, have a good day.
Thank you again so much.
All right, bye-bye.
You have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.